Hi, boys and girls. We have finished Miss Suki's Cookie, so we're going to start our 5th read aloud today. And we are starting Miss Yonkers is Bonkers. She is the computer teacher, the nerdiest teacher in the history of the world. We're going to read about her. Chapter 1, A Computer in My Head. My name is AJ, and I hate school. Do you know what would be cool? Instead of learning stuff in school, we could have computers built into our head that could be software for math, social studies, reading, and all the other stuff teachers say we need to know. You could plug whatever software you need right into your head, and then we wouldn't have to go to school anymore. Think about it. If I had computers in our head, we could spend more time doing stuff we want to do, like playing sports and video games and going to the movies and eating junk food. That would be cool. I would buy one of those computers in a minute, but I guess until somebody invents a computer you can plug into your head, we just have to keep going to school. Bummer in the summer. We just finished circle time in Miss Daisy's class when Mr. Klutz came into the room. He's the principal of elementary school, and he has no hair at all. I mean, none. Hats must slide off his head because there's nothing to hold them on. To what do we owe the pleasure of your visit, Mr. Klutz? Asked Miss Daisy. That's grown-ups talk for what are you doing here? I wanted to try out a new joke, Mr. Klutz said. Oh no, Mr. Klutz tells the worst jokes in the history of the world. Where's the best place to keep a remote control, he asked. Where, we all shouted. In a remote location, he said. Get it? Remote location? Mr. Klutz bent over laughing and slapped his knee even though the joke was totally lame. We all laughed anyway. You should always laugh at the principal's jokes. No matter how lame they are, that's the first rule of being a kid. But seriously, Mr. Klutz said, putting on his favorite serious face, so we knew it was time to get serious. I need to talk to you about something. Dr. Carble, the president of the Board of Education, wants us to bring elementary school into the 21st century. Cool, I shouted. We're going to travel through time. This is the 21st century, Arlo, said Andrea Young, this annoying girl with curly brown hair. She calls me by my real name because she knows I hate it. I knew that, I said, even though I really didn't. Only a smarty pants know-it-all like Andrea would know what number century it is. What is her problem? Who counts centuries? How are we going to bring our school into the 21st century, Mr. Klutz? Asked Andrea's crybaby friend Emily, who is allergic to ferrets. Are you going to spiff up the place? He replied. We're getting some new equipment, a security guard, a computer lab, a computer teacher too. In fact, she's right outside. Would you like to meet Miss Yonkers? Yay, said all the girls. No, said all the boys. Mr. Klutz went into the hallway and came back with some lady. You'll never believe in 1,100,000 years what she had on her head. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. But you have to read the next chapter. So nanny, nanny, boo-boo on you. Chapter 2. Say goodbye to sugar. Mrs. Yonkers was really weird looking. She was wearing a polka dot skirt and one of those big foam fake cheese things on her head. Howdy, y'all, she said. She must have been from Texas. People from Texas say y'all and yee-haw all the time on TV. Nobody knows why. In my younger days, Mr. Klutz said, I used to work with computers, but Mrs. Yonkers is a computer expert. What are the children going to learn in computer class, Miss Yonkers? Well, she said, clapping her hands together, we're going to make our own websites, create computer art and computer music, and play virtual reality. Games. I'll show you some of my own inventions too. I have so many ideas rumbling around in my head. Doesn't that sound like fun? Asked Mr. Klutz. Yes, said all the girls. No, said all the boys. Actually, it did sound like fun. I just like saying no when grown-ups try to get me to say yes. Too bad there isn't a computer program that makes up jokes, Mr. Klutz said. I could use one of those. I'll work on that, said Miss Yonkers. This afternoon, I'll be seeing you kids in the new computer lab. Does anybody have any questions before I leave? Why are you wearing a fake piece of cheese on your head? Asked my friend Ryan, who will eat anything, even stuff that isn't food. Isn't it funky? Asked Miss Yonkers. I bought it on eBay for 12 cents, plus $10 for shipping. Any other questions? Are you a nerd? Asked my friend Michael, who never ties his shoes. That's not very nice, Michael, said Miss Daisy. But Miss Yonkers didn't mind. She pulled up her sweater and showed us a t-shirt she had on underneath, and it said, "Nerds are cool." Say it loud, she said. I'm a nerd and I'm proud. Miss Yonkers is weird. A few minutes later, Mr. Klutz and Mrs. Yonkers left. Guess who walked into the doorway next? Nobody, because if you're walked into a doorway, it hurt. But guess who walked into the doorway? It was Mrs. Cooney, our school nurse. She had her eyes look like cotton candy, and she is beautiful. She wanted to marry me a while back, but I told her I wouldn't because she already married to some guy named Mr. Cooney. To what do we owe the pleasure of your visit, Miss Cooney, said Miss Daisy. Mr. Klutz asked me to help bring our school into the 21st century, Miss Cooney said. How are you going to do that? Asked Miss Daisy. Well, a big problem these days is too many kids are obese, said Miss Cooney. Too many kids are beasts, I asked. I was thinking about beasts because I had just saw this cool movie called King Kong. Obese is fat, Arlo, said Andrea. So's your face, I told her. Andrea probably looked up obese in her dictionary. She keeps one on her desk so she can look up words and show everybody how smart she is. I hate her. Miss Cooney told us that kids need to eat vegetables and other stuff like that doesn't taste good. Candy and sweets rot your teeth and dull your mind, Miss Cooney said. Did you know that a can of soda pop contains about 9 teaspoons of sugar? They call it junk food for a reason. What's the reason? I asked. Because it's junk, she said. Oh, I thought it was a trick question. How are we going to get our students to drink less soda pop and eat less junk food? Asked Miss Daisy. I'm glad you asked, said Miss Cooney. She held up a poster that said goodbye to sugar on it. Starting tomorrow, soda pops and junk food will no longer be allowed in elementary school. What? Did I hear that right? No more soda pop? No more candy? Suddenly, everybody was talking and whispering to one another. They've got to be kidding, said Michael. I'll die without junk food. Life will be horrible, said Neil, who we call Neil the nude kid, even though he wore clothes. This is going to be worse than National Poetry Month, said Ryan. This is going to be worse than TV turn-off week, I said. You boys are silly, said Andrea. I think saying goodbye to sugar is a great idea. I like healthy food. My favorite foods are herb roasted chicken, fresh fruit, and baked soy chips. Could you possibly be any more boring? I asked her. You'll feel a lot better once you start eating less junk food, Miss Cooney told us. How about giving up vegetables instead, I suggested. Arlo, you probably never even tasted a vegetable, said Andrea. I did too, I told her. I tasted one once and then I spit it out. My friend Billy, who lives around the corner, told me if you eat too many vegetables, you'll get a disease called vegetitis. So I stay away from that stuff. Besides, green is a weird color. It's the same color as boogers. You shouldn't eat stuff that's green. That's the first rule of being a kid. I was so depressed about saying goodbye to sugar that I could hardly pay attention during social studies, math, reading, and science. I wasn't even excited when Miss Daisy announced it was time to go to the computer lab to see Mrs. Yonkers. All I could think about was soda pop and junk food. We had to walk 1,100,000 miles to the computer lab. It's in the trailer in the back of the parking lot near the woods. We walked up a ramp to the trailer and we opened the door, and you'll never believe what we saw in there. Boys and girls, you'll have to join me for the next read aloud to find out what happens.